Everyone, welcome to this episode of About Time. As you know, this is a series where I get to chat to people whose work I love and who've influenced and inspired me. And today I'm just delighted that we have artist Steve Chapman. Steve, it's brilliant
Hello.
to have you here.
Yeah, I was so excited when I got the invitation. Very unexpected. And my jackdaws have
And
just turned up, by the way.
oh,
I can just
fantastic!
hear. I don't know if you can hear them on the mic, but I have a pack of jackdaws that comes for its breakfast. So you can
I,
see them.
I
Just
can actually see
yeah,
one just over
yeah,
your shoulder.
yeah.
Brilliant. Oh, they're very welcome. That's fantastic. So, Steve, it'd be brilliant if you could just say a few words right at the start, just to introduce yourself to people. I mean, who? Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I've given up on an elevator pitch many years ago because unless it's an elevator that sort of goes on for hours, I describe myself as an artist. It's the easiest way. That feels like the least wrong label, and then everything comes from there. So I'm an artist, and I do stuff. Um, I make art. I work with others. I do experiments. I paint and draw. I do talks, and I get
brilliant.
fascinated by stuff like what I call the windowsill gang, which is the collection of birds that show up every morning.
Yeah,
So that's probably a good enough description.
that's
Not
a
a
great
hand,
description. Yeah,
yeah, not a handy one for LinkedIn or a job application, but it feels close to the truth.
yeah, yeah. And you know, you and I, we've never worked together, but we've met a few times, and it's usually when I'm in London and I happen to catch sight of something you're doing on LinkedIn, and I say, "Are you around?" And I remember meeting you down just off the cut or Lower Marsh, and
Lower
you were
Marsh.
painting birds on a temporary pop up artwork.
Yeah, that was it. I'd forgotten about that one. That was a spontaneous thing. It's someone that follows me on Instagram said there's a shop hoarding below us, and I spoke to the owners, and they said you can do a mural on it, and I didn't know what to do, so I just painted a load of birds, and then that's when you contacted me. But
Yeah,
again, I don't know if it had happened by the time you got there, but it was just lots of black and white birds. And then that evening, everyone from the community came out and started colouring them in and naming them, and then it became like a community mural, which was
mm,
brilliant. And I went to do that in Nottingham in the end, but that's what I love about those types of things is I've no idea what's going to happen, and then it's always
yeah,
a surprise when you don't have a plan.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, it'd be brilliant to. I mean, that's what I love is the kind of the not a plan, doing stuff and seeing what happens. I love that about you. And you created my favorite flowchart ever of
Oh
all
yeah,
time, which I have. I have my copy of that. We'll put a link to it because can people still buy that one? Is a prints available?
yeah. That's the 10-year plan, which this is
Yeah,
the fourth edition of print. I keep
yeah,
finding different ways to make a new edition, but yeah, that's available in my shop.
yeah. Hmm. So we'll. I mean, I'd love to talk about your shop and how you make a living as an artist, but I mean, maybe we could start by, you know, have you always been an artist? Did you go to art school? I mean, how did you become an artist?
Yeah, I didn't go to art school. I don't think I'm necessarily qualified in anything that I do, with some exceptions, which I can talk about. But I think my life was like a sandwich with like being an artist now and at the start, and then a bit in the middle of forgetting that. So I
Yeah,
remember at primary school, I always remember being a very strange child, like just with like very vivid and crazy imagination. And at primary
yeah.
school, I went to primary school in Edmonton in North London. It's the same school that Chaz and Dave went to years before.
All
Was
right.
my
Yeah,
my claim to fame
yeah,
there. And I remember writing songs on an old weird keyboard. I mean, I say songs; they probably had three notes in them, and playing it in assembly and creating an orchestra of kids with a recorder to play the theme to Star Wars in assembly, um, and then like writing plays and writing stories and reading stories to younger kids and illustrating them and everything. And I just remember that time. Obviously, with hindsight and distorted memory of just being in a weird flow the entire time, and sort of maybe thinking, "Oh, this is what I do." But then went to secondary school, and nobody was interested in any of that. It's like, no, they're hobbies. That's what little kids do. That type of thing. You need to do maths and English, and I think the biggest thing that I got from secondary school was teaching myself that the things that I'm good at aren't of any value, and the things that I'm not good at is what everyone values. Um, and I am good at things like maths and English, but just not in the way they're taught. I can't sit exams. I can't do all of that type of stuff. So I left secondary school thinking, definitely not an artist or a creative. I need to get a job. And then went into the world of work, like straight from school. I did A-level
Yeah.
geography so I could go up mountains. That's the only reason I did A-level geography, and I got a D in that, which was my highest academic achievement. And then got a job in a factory. And then from there, I mean, I just became fascinated by people in the factory, kept getting promoted, kept getting different jobs. And then over the space of about 15 years, ended up leaving that organization as like global director of leadership and organization development, just because I was fascinated by all of
Yeah.
that. I had a really good boss in one of those jobs that I've often mentioned in podcasts, and she sponsored my education. She paid for me to go to do the Masters in Organisational Change and Culture at Ashridge, which I think is probably
Yeah.
where we originally met.
Well, it's certainly one of our several connections.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And
What I can't
yeah,
remember, Steve, is when. When did you do it?
I did. It was called AMOC, so the Ashridge Masters in
Yeah.
Organisational Change. I did that maybe 2011, 2012.
Yeah. So I think I was probably 3 or 4 years before
Before
you
that,
on the
yeah,
same program. And
yeah.
actually, one of these podcasts we've done features Bill Critchley,
All
who, of
right,
course,
yeah,
yeah, and Bill was on talking about creating that masters and how that
yeah,
was his. He says his finest. He described it as his finest hour because it was
yeah.
a really pioneering degree that brought together different worlds. It was a
Oh,
brilliant thing.
it was, and Bill, along with Sally, who is my boss in the organisation, Bill was another person that was absolutely instrumental in what I do now. So I went to. I'm always fascinated by these things that might not have happened, but a boss that I had was supposed to be going to a seminar in West London that Bill and Karen Vanston from Ashridge were talking at.
Oh
It was
yeah,
about
yeah,
change, and my boss said, "Oh, I can't be bothered to go. Do you want to go?" And I thought, oh, it's miles away. I can't, yeah, I don't really go to that sort of stuff. And I went, and it was pivotal because it was Bill and Karen talking about change and complexity. And I had a moment of thinking, it isn't that I'm rubbish at change management and all this like very logical, linear, positivist ways about change. It's because they're rubbish. And what Bill was saying made sense of like change and society and it just being this complex relational process. And I went up to Bill afterwards and said, Bill, can I just buy you coffees and hang out with you lots? And he said, yeah.
yeah.
And so I used to go and meet him in North London and just chat about stuff. And then Bill said to me, I think you should do the Masters. I think you should do AMOC. And I said, no, Bill, I've got a D in A-level geography. I'm not academic. And then the next year he asked me again. And this sounds like a Bible tale whenever I tell this. And then he asked me again once more. He goes, I'm not going to ask you again. It's the last time I'm asking. Do you want to do it or not? And so I said, yes, I'll do it. And Bill said, well, that was your interview. You're in. So Bill saw something, and he knew my
Yeah.
work. He knew my work, and he knew me, and he knew the way that I thought. And Bill saw something in me, the same as Sally did, and I did Amok, and it was a pivotal change for me. Because it encouraged me to write in the way that I write, to think in the way that I think, to express myself in that way. It really focused my interest in spontaneity and creative self-expression, and I left. That was the start of the second part of the sandwich. Was
Isn't that
Amok for
brilliant?
me?
Yeah, yeah. So I love that. First of all, I didn't know that story about Bill kind of being informal coffee mentor,
Yeah,
over time. I didn't know that, and that's something lovely in the do you want to do this master's degree? And coming back to it, and you said he saw something in me, and Sally saw something in you.
Yeah.
I don't. Can you? What was it?
I I really don't know, but
Oh,
it's something about the way that I perceive the world and my experience, or the way I articulate it, or the way I synthesize information, or
yeah,
I think maybe they saw more of the uncensored, unmasked me because I felt safe enough to share more of that.
yeah,
Maybe they saw beyond self doubt and that type of thing and thought there was some interest or potential there. Like, what if we give Steve some freedom to express this even more? And both of them did that. And I think without them seeing that, I don't know what I'd be. I don't know what I'd be doing. And then, of
yeah,
course, it was like I got a distinction in the masters at the time for my dissertation. It was the highest mark they'd given a dissertation, and which was like crazy for me because I had such a chip on my shoulder about not having a degree, and then suddenly to be told that. And then I left, and then I went independent. So I've been independent since like 2012, I think, just working for myself and carrying on pursuing what interested me in my dissertation, I think.
yeah. And what was that? What in the dissertation?
I mean, it's shifted, but essentially, my dissertation was written about spontaneity, which is a really hard dissertation to write when you think about it. It's like, how do I intentionally write about spontaneity and capture it on a page? But it was
Yeah,
it was taking a lot of the complexity ideas that Bill had taught
mm,
me from people like Ralph Stacey, Patricia Shaw, Doug Griffin, combine it with a lot of Gestalt, which I'm also really interested in. So Fritz and Laura Pearls, Arnie Beiser, and then lots of creative practices.
yeah,
My research for my dissertation was I trained in and performed improvisation on stage. It was musical improvisation, which is like another step of like seat of the pants. So what I just became interested in is literally everything is spontaneous. I guess that was my dissertation. Literally everything is spontaneous, and at the heart of that is um, sort of like the paradox of freedom and stuckness. It's Eric Fromm wrote a brilliant book called Escape from Freedom, which I don't know if you've read. And in
no, I haven't. No.
I didn't read this for the dissertation. I read this like I don't know about 4 or 5 years ago. And at the heart of that, Eric Fromm is saying, well, if human beings really achieved the freedom that we so desire, it would overwhelm us and terrify us because we'd realize that we are meaning-seeking creatures in a disinterested universe that we don't understand. And so we are in that complete balance of trying to escape from that complete freedom. So I guess my dissertation was just being interested moment by moment. How am I moving towards stuckness or freedom? And I started to think that creativity is simply spontaneous creative expression, spontaneous free creative expression. And if you have a pen in your hand, it may result in a drawing, but you could be typing a spreadsheet or parenting or going for a walk. And that's what was at the heart of it. And I wrote at the heart of my dissertation was, I think I picked 120 seconds of my life that I videoed and recorded, and just really went really deep in every moment. That idea of William Blake idea of seeing the world in a grain of sand. And it's like in
Mm,
every moment, everything you could possibly need to know is encoded in that moment.
yeah.
And then it evolved from there. I think if I read it now, I'd go, yeah, I don't. I've sort of my thinking's moved on a bit, which is why I hate writing. I wrote a book just after I left, and that's what I don't really like it anymore. But people buy it still.
Yeah. Was that there was something about scorpion smoke,
Yeah,
or something?
can
Yeah,
scorpion smoke, which was
can scorpions? Yeah,
yeah, which was that came up in my dissertation. So to cut a long story short, it was an improv scene, and I spontaneously said, "Can scorpion smoke?" And at that point, I thought I've no idea where that came from. I've absolutely
yeah,
no idea where that came from. It's just a random collection of words. And someone said, "Oh, you should call your dissertation 'Can Scorpions Smoke?'" So I did, and I like the idea of there being all these very sensible sounding dissertations, and then one called "Can Scorpions Smoke?" Um, and then that became the name of my business registered at Company's House, which is always interesting when I'm doing my tax return.
Well, do you know, again, I didn't know that story, but we have something in common because my dissertation was uh, why I should give up a master's degree and learn consulting from my spaniel.
Nice, nice. I like that. Yeah,
Yeah, it's called the Pugwash Papers. It was like
yeah.
how my spaniel was so much more able to live in a moment and explore
Ah,
things
that's
much
brilliant.
better than I could, much
Yeah,
better than I could.
yeah. Oh, I love that. And I think
Uh,
I think it's really important to baffle and confuse people, and make people go, "What?" And I love that about that title. There's a book that I never finished books. There's a book that I started reading called "Teaching Quantum Physics to a Dog," which I don't know if you've come across. And the whole hypothesis was a dog's probably more likely to understand it because a dog lives in a weird world where it forgets stuff every few seconds and remembers weird things and has habits. So yeah, I like the sound of yours.
I'm definitely going to have to look up that book now as well, because that's again one I don't know.
Yeah, and again, I didn't read it all, so it's not a recommendation. It's just I tend to
No,
get an idea of, oh, that book sounds interesting, start reading it, and then get bored or distracted.
yeah, yeah. I, one of the great things that I love about doing this is these podcasts is the connections between things. And a couple of weeks ago, we had Jean Bolton. I don't know if you know Jean, but she's just written a book on the Tao of complexity.
Right.
So she teaches complexity. She is a quantum physicist, a PhD in quantum physics, but also really interested in Eastern religions. And she'd love this conversation. And so I'm just going to say to people, there's loads of links between the Bill Critchley one, the Jean Bolton one, and what we're talking about here. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, nice.
Uh, uh, and you also I don't think it was around the same time, but you did an event um, like was it called
Oh
Inexpert or
yeah,
something,
yeah,
which I just found the most brilliant non-conference or event anyway. Yeah,
yeah,
tell us about it.
yeah. In expert, there's a number of I call them projects. There's a number
Yeah,
of projects that I've done, um, which tend to come from just a question, and I think in expert was my response to what I saw as the growing cult of TED. And I have a mixed relationship with TED, TED Talks, TEDx, because I've done a couple, but I also
yeah,
think that it's sort of become a bit of a parody of itself. And what the moment that I thought there's something going on here was I was running a 2-day inner critic workshop with Simon Kaviccia, who I work with.
yeah,
So it's a workshop about creativity, shame, self-expression, inner critic, superego. And it's 2 days. And at the end of the first day, people are quite discombobulated. And this young woman come up to me at the end of day one and said, "Oh, this is really good. My head's frazzled. Is there a TED talk I could watch tonight that will explain it all to me?" And I just thought that's really interesting. It's like we're treating these like philosophical or psychological paracetamol, these TED talks. It's going to numb the pain rather than us doing the work. And then I just become really interested in this cult of expertise that we go to a thing and there's a speaker on stage that holds expertise. And it's a bit like I don't know, maybe like a Roman gladiatorial thing where we sit there and we go, yep, that was good, or no. So we either swallow it whole or reject it. And I thought, I wonder what the opposite of TED would be. I wonder what would happen if I did something that was the opposite of TED. And there was a phrase that I learned from Keith Johnson when I trained with him, which is, if you're going to die, die big and spectacularly. So, so I thought if I'm going to do the opposite of TED, it needs to be fail big and spectacularly. So I booked the John Lyons Theatre in Covent Garden, like 100-seater theatre, and I said to everyone, "This is going to be called an expert. It's going to be the opposite of TED." And I recruited 16 speakers to give talks on subjects that they were interested in, but had no expertise or experience in. And that was a really important constraint. They were interested and fascinated and had no expertise in. Because I wanted it to be a bit like, imagine a 5-year-old child at show and tell, gives a talk on dinosaurs, and they may know 3 facts about dinosaurs, but they do it as if they are the world's expert paleontologist. And I recruited 16 speakers. And I can talk about the recruitment process for speakers because that was fascinating in itself. And then it completely sold out. It was all not for profit, and it was just a weird thing. It's like,
I tell you what, Steve, I so wanted to be there, but I couldn't be. I was working in Denmark, so I
right,
couldn't come. So this is great to catch up and hear more
yeah.
about it from, yeah, yeah, yeah. So you were just about to say something about the recruitment
Yeah.
process.
So the recruitment of
Yeah,
speakers was, so I did an open call and I had 16
yeah.
slots and I think maybe 150 people applied. Um,
Wow.
and they went into three different buckets. The applications. The first bucket was people that clearly just apply for anything. And I mean, the brief was really clear. I want you to give this talk. This is what the event is. And people would apply, say, yeah, I've got a new way of working with B2B clients in an agile way, and I want to share my methodology. And it's like, no, that's not even relevant. It's like you just apply for everything. So they all went in the bin. The second bucket was the one I found fascinating. Was so many people, um, sort of in similar worlds to what we're in, like coaching, consulting world. They wanted to do talks about the importance of not knowing. And I was thinking, no, I want you to not know. I don't want you to talk about it. That's not what I'm after. And there were so many of them and friends and people I know. And it was really hard to say, this isn't what I'm looking for. I'm sorry. And I probably offended lots of people. And then the third bucket were people like a guy wrote to me and said, I've always loved robots, but I know nothing about them. And it's like, perfect, you're in. That's the type of thing that we want. And I narrowed it down to 16. But it was that's something that I'm really interested in, is this idea of aboutism. It's like, we want to explore discomfort, edge of comfort zone, not knowing, dissonance, but we want to do it theoretically and talk about it rather than experience it. And I really didn't want an expert to be that. And then all of the little details around an expert were really important. But no one needed to really know what they were doing, but be passionate about it. So I'd never done it before. So I didn't know that. City Lit had never done an event like that before. And they were brilliant. I loved working with them. Um, I got a brilliant coach and psychotherapist did the ticketing at the door. So that wasn't what they normally do. Someone I knew at Ashridge that was a consultant did the videoing. They videoed all the talks. They'd never used a video camera before. And Nick Parker, my friend Nick, who's a brilliant musician and
Yeah,
artist, he'd been learning to play the trumpet for like just 6 weeks. And I got Nick to do all the music for us. And
yeah,
what was perfect is I said, Nick, you can play whatever you want in the intervals. But I want you to start in Expert by playing Also Strack Zarathustra. Because what I love about that, the theme tune to 2001, is it's big and majestic and normally played by like the London Symphony Orchestra. And I wanted Nick to be inexpertly trying to play it. And that was the first thing that happened at Inexpert. The lights went down and Nick played it. And everyone experienced, this is what this is about.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it I never have an objective in any of these projects. I have an intention. It's like, what would the opposite of TED be? But that means that whatever happens is perfect. And it's just broke down so many barriers or norms that normally happen at conferences. Um, I think the audience felt as awkward as the speakers. Um,
mm,
one guy, and I coached all the speakers to
yeah,
make sure that they were in a place of not knowing, which was an interesting dynamic. It's like James Traeger, who you probably know, did a talk about
yeah, yeah.
tennis. So James said, I hate tennis. I don't know much about it. I'm not very good at it. I'll do a talk about tennis. And I said, we're almost there. Do the talk. I'm going to bounce tennis balls at you on stage and you have to hit them back to me while you're doing the talk. Which was brilliant because it just completely interrupted any vague knowledge of tennis that he had. And it was just, yeah. And then
Yeah,
at the end of it, it was half a day. Um, two of the speakers were ill, so we only had 14 in the end. Everyone said to me, "That's great. When's the next one?" And I said, I can't ever do it again." And I'm always interested in that. And maybe to my detriment is when it gets to
yeah,
that point of the sensible thing to do is to scale up, monetize all of that. I kill projects. It's like, no, I want everything to end well and intentionally and at a peak. So I said to everyone, it can't ever happen again because I'll know
yeah.
what I'm doing. I've set, if someone else wants to do it, then fine. But
Yeah, I know, but I was one of those people who came to you and said, I couldn't come. When's the
yeah,
next one? And you
yeah,
said, never.
yeah. And it's
Yeah,
so
yeah,
tempting to do it. It's so tempting to
yeah.
do it. And I did the Silent Podcast Project, which was 100 episodes, and it was so tempting to keep that going because it's really popular. But it's no, ends well intentionally and at a peak.
Sorry, I've got. What was that?
The Silent Podcast Project. Again, this was I'll tell the abridged version, and you can ask more
Yeah.
details about that. That happened just after an expert. I think I had the idea beforehand, but it was too much at once. And it was what's the opposite of a podcast? I like podcasts. I'm on a podcast now. I listen to podcasts, but there's also so many podcasts out there that don't
Wow.
really say or do anything. So I thought, what's the opposite of a podcast? Oh, it would be silence. You broadcast silence. It'd be emptiness. So in a content-obsessed world, people would download nothingness. A bit like John Cage's 4 minutes
Yeah.
33.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, I always like to start things before I thought them through too much. So I said to everyone, "This is going to be the world's first silent podcast featuring special guests." It's called Sound of Silence, which was a working title that ended up being the actual title, and it's going to start, I don't know, June 2018 or whenever it was. And it was literally that. Is every week I put out 2 minutes of silence recorded face to face with a special guest, and did that for 100 weeks. And I said at the start it's going to be 100 episodes, and then thought, oh shit, that's over 2 years. That's quite a lot of work. And it again, it was just it's like the podcast wasn't really the point of it. It was the experience that I had in doing it. I recorded episodes with people like Eddie Izzard and David Shrigley and Vic Reeves and Stella Duffy and Jade Adams, and went to all these weird and wonderful places. Had all these adventures, met these brilliant people. I spent a day with Terry Waite talking like in his house in like, Norfolk or Suffolk, talking
Yeah.
about politics and war and captivity and religion, and then we record nothing for 2 minutes, and then have another conversation, and it's it. And then I mean, it was crazy because between 15 and 20,000 people listened to it,
Yeah.
which I don't know if that's good or bad podcast stats. I've no idea. But people listened to it. I mean, lots of people thought it was stupid, pretentious art stuff. But what I liked about it is it became an empty container for people. And
Yeah.
people would write and say, oh, I needed this. I was feeling anxious today, and this podcast's about anxiety, or this podcast's about peace. Olia Hercules, the Ukrainian chef, was on an episode, and her little baby was young at the time. He was in the background. And people said, oh, this episode's about working mothers. That's just what I need right now. And really, what I learned from that was the importance of these empty containers that people can pour into it what they need. And that's how I think of art now.
Yeah.
I don't like art that comes with instructions, that tells you what you should be thinking or feeling, but art that is just that invitation. It's like it reflects back whatever you need in that moment. So that was the Silent Podcast Project, and it ended after 100 episodes.
Brilliant. I, and now you've mentioned it, I remember the Sound of Silence work, but I'd forgotten completely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd completely forgotten. Um, but you do quite a bit with, or you have done quite a bit with Simon Kavickian, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah.
And is the mask work with him, or is that separate again?
No, the mask work was separate. I learned mask work from Keith Johnson, like back when I
Right.
was doing my master's in 2012, and started running mask workshops myself. But we bring a little bit of the mask work into the 2-day inner critic work. Because it's just, masks are just a brilliant pattern interrupter. It interrupts our habitual experience of ourselves in a way that can be really powerful. But yeah, I've worked with Simon a lot over the years.
Mm. And is that something we can say a few words about now in case people are interested? I mean, what is the inner critic work?
So the inner critic work, again, it started. I tend to create stuff because I can't find what I want out there already. So it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm looking for a group or an event or a workshop or a thing that will help me with this, and they don't exist, so I have to create them. Um, so Simon's a Gestalt psychotherapist, really interested in shame, really interested in superego. I met him at Ashridge, and we get on really well. Um, I teach with Simon and Charlotte on the coaching masters.
Ah,
Charlotte
yes.
Seals on the coaching masters at Ashridge, and we just thought, well, combining his deep experience and knowledge in psychotherapy and Gestalt, my interest in Gestalt, and maybe creative ways of coming at it, what would happen if we explored this area? Um, and I did it was the TED talk that I referred to earlier. I did a talk called, what was it called? Like something like "This talk isn't very good," and
Yeah.
it was about my inner critic. And what I found, so I'm telling this story in a weird order, but what I found was the more that I shared this dark, shameful, horrible part of myself, the more its power seemed to diminish a bit. Or maybe not diminish, it changed it. I think it's that whole idea of shame lurks in the shadows. If we bring it into the light, it starts to lose some of its power. So I started talking to people about self doubt, about all of these things. And then I started drawing my inner critic and sharing it with people. And I use inner critic in quotes, but I'm not going to keep doing quotes because it's annoying.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's far more complex than I think just calling it the inner critic is a bit of a reductionist, like, LinkedIn clickbait thing. But I can't think of a better word. Uh, and then I thought, what's the biggest stage that I can do this on? I can take my shameful story on into the light and see if it works there. And I did a talk for TEDx Royal Tunbridge Wells, and it went down really well. And it's got like just short of 200,000 views. I'm not sure what it is now, but it was round about that. And what was brilliant about that, and that's the theme that's carried on, is sharing these dark, shameful parts of myself. Not all of them. How it helps me, but also people find comfort in it or see something of themselves in it. So on the back of all of that, Simon and I said, let's just create a 2-day workshop combining everything. So we do Gestalt work in there, mindfulness work, movement, like 2-chair Gestalt work, some improvisation stuff, masks, and it's not aimed to fix anything. It's it's experiences that feel safe enough. I think Fritz Perls called them safe emergencies. To create these safe emergencies and experiences that we're able to deal with that just help us to, I guess, get into a relationship. I refer it as learning to dance with the inner critic rather than do battle with it, because trying to defeat it and be mean to it, for me at least, is some sort of like psychological self-harm, because it's just a very young thing with our best intentions at heart that's just got a bit fucked up over the years. So that's what those 2 days are. And again, like I said earlier, in that work, and why I like working with Simon, um, is there's not much aboutism in it. They are raw experiences that people do the work to make sense of it, and we'll offer some guidance and support, and maybe some maps and navigation aids in the form of theories and models to help with that. And I don't know how many of those we've done. We've been doing them for maybe about 8 or 10 years now.
Yeah. And then the I'm conscious that we're on about 35 minutes at the moment.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
um, but and we've got at least a week of things we could talk about. But the most recent time I've seen you was your exhibition at the Barbican, and that was
yeah,
a two of you exhibiting, wasn't it? And I'm
yeah.
afraid I can't remember the name of the exhibition.
Yeah, so that was an exhibition that I did with Joe Wood, or JD Woof,
Joe Wood, yeah.
which was, we both have a similar practice of using art as a form of sense making or self therapy. And I realized that really the reason, I can say the reason that I do stuff is because I'm fascinated by it. But I think underneath that, a new layer I'm trying to explore is I do stuff because it helps me
Yeah.
in some way. A creative expression helps me in some way. It soothes me. I don't know what it is. It helps me make sense. So the exhibition was called Feelings Are Real, and it was at Barbican Library. And yeah, it was crazy to do an exhibition at Barbican. And it was there for like 3.5 weeks, I think. And what Joe and I did is, it was, I don't know, work that we'd made. I mean, the majority of it was work that we'd made that we never thought anyone would see. Um, like, well, maybe each other wouldn't see it, but like no one would see. We just thought, well, what would happen if we showed that? And again, the response, even when we were hanging it, on the day we were hanging it, people were wandering in, and I'm always like, no, it's not ready yet. Don't come in. And we could just hear people going, "Oh wow, yeah, oh that really hits home," or "Yeah, I'm the same with that," or it's a weird combination of I'd be interested in your experience on it, reflecting back on it. But there's something, I think it's in Joe's art as well, but definitely in mine. I did an exhibition called Existential Tussles of the Heart, which is just black and white stuff. It was similar, but not as bold as Feelings Are Real. And someone at the end said to me, I didn't know how to respond in there because it made me laugh, but I knew it was really difficult stuff. And I really liked that combination, those paradoxical experiences. And I think people got that from Feelings Are Real. It's like, I don't know, should I feel sorry for the people here? Should I be sad? Should I? But it's really funny and it's weird and exciting. And so yeah, that's what that exhibition was.
Yeah, but that's for me. That's art doing it. That's art doing what art does, isn't
Yeah.
it? It's yeah, yeah. Mm. Steve, what? So what's now? What's next?
I struggle with the question, what's next? I really,
Yeah,
because I'm not saying it's a bad question, and
yeah.
so I have no idea. I really have no
Huh?
idea.
Mm,
I think what what I find is I go through cycle. If I go looking for something, I'll never find it, or I'll find something that's like a synthetic substitute of it. And I'm really interested in Arnie Mindell's idea of quantum flirting, which I'm sure you've come across. The idea that instead of going looking for inspiration, um, my job is to quieten so I can hear it whispering to me because it's been whispering all along. So I don't know, but something's starting to emerge that I get that feeling, the same as a silent podcast, the same as all the other weird projects that I've done. It's like, oh, there's something in this, and it's just at the start. So I was really bored and had nothing to do, and I live by myself here. And about 4 weeks ago, I went to a board games night in Bethnal Green, which I'd never
right.
do because I really, these type of conversations I'm comfortable in, but I can't do small talk and introduce myself to people I don't know. So I went to the board games evening, and there's just so many chances of rejection there. It's like I got there, everyone was already playing. It's like, oh, what do I do? I went up to a group that were getting a game, said, "Can I join you?" And I said, "No, we've got enough players." But then there was this one Persian guy who was playing backgammon, and he said, "Do you want to play?" And I said, "Yeah." And I said, "I don't know how to play," and he didn't want to teach me, but then he taught me backgammon. And I just got lost in playing backgammon with this guy, him telling me the story of growing up in Persia, showing me some of where he comes from, and just this instantly deep conversation while we played backgammon. And I bought a backgammon board since then, and I don't really have anyone to play with. So I just put on Instagram, does anyone want to play backgammon with me? That's all it is. And about 15 people have replied and said, I love playing backgammon, or I don't know what it is, but I'd like to play. And so I'm just going to start playing backgammon with people and having conversations. And I may like incorporate some art into it, like maybe a portrait of them or something in that, because I don't know, there's something fascinating about it. That having that focus area, it's like having a conversation around a campfire. When I've painted sticks in the park, I just painted sticks in the park for something to do. I end up having such amazing conversations with strangers. So that backgammon thing may become a thing.
Mm.
Equally, by the end of today, I might think, no, I'm not doing that. Um, it will make me no money. But what I find is indirectly, this work ends up helping me like make a living. Because
Yeah,
it's really hard to make a living by just selling art, unless you're
yeah.
like
Right.
David Shrigley and you have a whole army behind you to do it. And I like David's work. Um, but what I've found is I've started to get paid to go and do talks about weird projects like the Silent Podcast and that type of thing. And it sort of feels like actually this backgammon thing, even if it doesn't, even if I don't share it with anyone, it's a fascinating story. So I think that's my answer as to what's next. Maybe that, but I have a very empty diary over the next couple of months.
Uh, so, I mean, we're getting close to time, but I do want to ask: is there anything that like I should have asked you that you like really want to talk about that I just haven't given you a chance to?
Oh, I don't know. Um, I wrote. I moved from Mailchimp to Substack recently, and
Oh,
just because Mailchimp started like I don't know 15 years ago as a newsletter, and it's ridiculous. It's like a website designer, and it costs loads of money. I thought I don't really use all the features, so I moved to Substack, and I decided, well, I might as well write some more. I haven't written for a long time. I used to write blogs, and so I've used Substack as an excuse to do that. But I rewrote an article that I recently wrote, that I wrote about 7 or 8 years ago, that's called Four Philosophies for Living a Creative Life. No, Four Lightly Held Philosophies for Living a Creative Life. And they were: be fascinated, open windows into your world, learn to live below your means, and hang out with other weirdos. And I can leave it as vague as that, but I guess that would be, that's at the heart of what I do. And that's if people say to me, what's your advice? I mean, it's not really advice because they've still got to work it out for themselves within them. They'd be the four things.
I think they're great. Non-advice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially,
And
especially hanging out with good quality weirdos, which I,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, because if you, this is the thing, and I've got a big interest in neurodiversity in my own, in that of others. If if you're really going to unmask and move towards your own natural, weird, and wonky way of thinking and feeling and experiencing and doing, um, unless you got other weirdos to hang out with, it could be quite lonely because everyone else is doing the normal thing. So yeah, hanging out with weirdos, which is why I was delighted to be invited to this podcast. What weirdos is a compliment for me. So
I
yeah,
know, definitely. Big
yeah,
compliment.
yeah,
Steve, I mean, we are going to need to finish, but could I ask you to provide a couple of links to your website, to your shop,
yeah,
to, because you do such fantastic stuff. I've got a couple of your pieces myself, and I just, you know, love that anybody who listens to this finds out more about your work.
yeah,
Um, Let me just say a couple of words to close off the episode, and I'll come back to say a proper thank you before we finish. So, everybody, thanks for listening and or watching this episode. Um, so many links to other things. I hope you find Steve's work as fascinating as I do. There's so much more that you could follow up. Um, Steve, thank you for coming. It's been brilliant to just spend half an hour or so with you.
yeah. Likewise, it's, I love these experiences when it's just like time changes. So yeah, it's been lovely to be part of it and reconnect and to chat about stuff we haven't chatted about before.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you.